All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm A.L. Johnson with A.L. Johnson Life Insurance Agency. Thanks for joining us. We're just going to have a quick conversation here. I've got my buddy that I'm going to be tapping in here in just a second, Mr. Larnell Jones from the Lawrence A. Jones Funeral Home, which is a staple here in Kansas City. They've been around since 1950, thousands of families, but he's going to be here answering a lot of your most pertinent questions as it relates to funeral planning and making sure that you can, give your loved ones a respectable service when that time comes. One thing that I really want to do, and I'm trying my best to give as much quality information to our people as I can. One thing that I notice, especially when it comes to financial matters and things like that, it's difficult to get the information that you want from salespeople. It's just the truth. They always want to say, hey, inbox me this or hop on this webinar, and it's always sell, sell, sell. But I want to be a little different in the fact that I want to educate people. And so make sure that you have your questions. You can leave those in the comment or the chat. No question is off limits. We want to make sure that we answer all of your questions today. But one thing that I do encourage you to do, and I use this analogy, it's the gym membership analogy. A lot of times people, when it comes to information, we feel like we've done enough just by gathering it. Sometimes we'll take one step and we feel like that's enough. I started working out a couple years ago. I had got away from, got off my fitness regimen, and I started working out at, Planet Fitness. So they've got the $10 a month membership, right? So I'm going for maybe about 3 or 4 months, and then I notice no matter what time I go, whether it's 5 in the morning or if it's in the afternoon or the evening, I will see the same people kind of continuously. And so it made me ask the guy at the front desk, I'm like, with all the overhead, we got this commercial building, all the employees, the insurance, the equipment. How are you able to sustain this type of business when you've only got a handful of people, coming in? And what he shared with me is that there are thousands of people that pay every month, but only a couple hundred that actually go. And so what that made me think about is the fact that sometimes we can do simple things like getting a gym membership makes us feel like we, are a step closer towards having a fit body or having the health that we want, when in reality the only thing we've done is just taken that initial step. But until we follow through and actually do the exercise physically, we don't get any results. I say that to say this: if you hear any information during this broadcast and it touches your heart, or it's something that that you need to take care of, don't just leave it here. Make sure that you get in contact with a professional. So real quick, I'm going to go ahead and bring my brother on the line here. Just a second. Hey, Larnell, how you doing, bro? Can you hear me?
Hey, yeah, I can hear you pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Yes, sir. Thanks for coming on. So tell me this. So Lawrence A. Jones has been around since 1950, correct?
That's right. Yes, sir. Yeah, both of my grandparents, the late Mr. Lawrence A. Jones Sr., they started the fall of 1950.
Okay. And so you're what, second, third generation? How you?
So I'm the third generation actually. We're 4 generations now, but I'm a member of the third generation.
That's awesome. So your family has a rich history in Kansas City. Are the original Joneses from Kansas City, or are you guys from somewhere else?
Yeah, so my grandfather was a native here in Kansas City, Missouri. Grew up here, went to school at R.T. Coles. But my grandmother she was a native of Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now I know you guys have helped thousands of families over the years. How long ago did you actually get into the business yourself?
So I'm actually a native here of Kansas City, Missouri. I grew up the first 12 years of my life. I grew up here in Kansas City, here in the urban core, and then my immediate family moved to Oklahoma, actually. So I grew up in Tulsa, and then finished college in Oklahoma City. But I recently moved back to Kansas City back in 2017. So I've been just about 4 years now, and just came back to help with the family business, and continue the legacy.
That's awesome. So tell me this. I got a couple of questions. I've been in the insurance business for almost 12 years. It'll be 12 years Friday. There's a couple things that I bump into and questions that I get all the time from clients. And so I'm on one side of the ball where I help people essentially finance their funeral through life insurance. And you're on the other side where you actually take care of the funeral services and things like that. What is the main thing that you've seen, and this is I've always wondered this, but as a percentage, what would you say the number of people that come in prepared, meaning they have life insurance, they already have their plans in order, versus the people that tragedy strikes, they were completely unprepared, and they have to try to make, different types of arrangements?
And man, that's a pretty good question. I would definitely say a good vast. I'll say probably about 50-50, honestly, or what have you. I mean, granted, everyone's not going to have life insurance or any pre-planning measures in place, but most of the time there is some level of financial cover they have, whether it's, personal check or credit card or what have to cover things.
Got you. And so kind of 50-50 on the prepared versus the unprepared. Do you
Yeah,
notice
I'll say about
anything?
50-75, yeah.
Okay. Do you notice anything difference in the process as far as the ease of putting things together, or do you notice any difference in maybe the demeanor of the family when things are already taken care of versus? I know there's grief there, but do you notice anything different?
Oh, most definitely. I always say one of the advantages of planning ahead of time is that all the tough decisions that have to be made when someone passes away, they're already made from selecting the casket, the color, the type of flowers, the location of if there's a burial, the location of the burial, if there's going to be a cremation, all those different factors. All those different factors are already made, so it makes it a lot easier on the family members who are left behind to coordinate the remaining details.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, interesting. So one thing I was looking at when I was kind of researching for the interview was the price of funerals over time, right? And so
Okay.
I was looking at the price of funerals back in the 30s, the 40s. People were
Right.
having full funeral services for like a thousand
Right.
dollars, right?
Right.
And
Exactly. Right.
yeah, as far as I know the last claim that my insurance agency had, we sent out a check for about $9,000, and so what I'm seeing
Okay.
is anywhere from 8,000 to about 10,000 on average. My question is this: if the funeral prices went from $1,000 to around $10,000 within a span of less than 100 years, do you still see that same trajectory going forward? Like for a young person planning for their funeral, maybe they're purchasing life insurance. What's an amount that will kind of take care of a funeral in the future?
And you're meaning like current times, or maybe 10 to 15 years down the line.
Yeah, like 10, 15, 20 years down the line.
Oh yeah, prices are definitely going to double, I'm sure, by that time. And I think one thing that we have going on nowadays is cremation, or what have you. Cremation definitely on the rise. I think most of your East Coast and West Coast parts of the country have already seen a substantial increase, where you have at least 50% to 75% of cremations are the majority of the method of disposition. But yeah, I would definitely say that for sure. It's definitely going to be increased for sure.
Let me ask you this: when it comes to the cremations, I grew up in a church where they just kind of taught against that. And I know a lot of people have heard that before, where I don't want to be cremated. We believe
All
in
right.
traditional burial, etc. Do you think that the move in cremation is mostly based off of cost and it being more cost effective? Or do you think that there's just a shift in the mindset for cremation overall? What have you seen with that?
Yeah, I would definitely say the latter. I think it's really personal. I think in generation before people really valued what I could just call traditionalism, and weddings, funerals. Those were big events during someone's lifetime. Whereas people, they're not putting as much emphasis on those things or much value. And so once the perceived value has deteriorated or has shifted, then at that point, you know perspectives change or what have you. So such as cremation being more popular than earth burials.
Got you. Makes sense. So, what is the cost of the average cremation now?
So so I always say it kind of depends on with cremation. You can still do like a full funeral ceremony with the cremation following. You can do a cremation with a memorial service, and then you can just do what we call a direct cremation, where there's no services, there's no funeral visitation whatsoever. Um, but I would definitely anticipate around for a full service with cremation following. You're looking at about $4,500 or so.
About forty
And
five hundred.
granted, there are different prices depending on which firm you go to as well. Everyone has the various prices, but on average, I would say about $45,000 for a full cervical cremation following.
Got it. Got it. Now, one thing that I know, when I started in the insurance business, there was a company called SCI out of
Right,
Texas,
that's right.
Service Corporation International. They were going around buying up funeral homes like all over the country. And I
Right.
see that you guys stayed family owned, which is good. We need more black owned family
Right.
businesses in the community, most definitely. With you guys being able to do that and maintain control, does that allow you any flexibility as it comes to working with families who may be in a tight spot and were unprepared versus them going to a funeral home owned by a large corporation?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I'll say historically, you have a lot of mom and pop businesses that are very community focused entities or what have you. And so in the past, from a historical perspective, they have tried to meet clients where they are, especially friends. That sense of community really, especially at our family, that sense of community was kind of one of the foundational principles or what have you. So,
Right.
so we have, for the most part, we try our best to help families, meet them where they are at with whatever the financial obligations are.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing. Now, are there any that you know of, any services, any organizations that can help a family in need who is unprepared? I know there's Corey's Network. I'm familiar
Right,
with that. They'll help
right,
victims of violence, like gun violence. Are there any
right.
other organizations here in the city that you're aware of?
Yeah, there's definitely several, what have you. Most of the organizations that I'm familiar with help families of, homicides, or what have you. You have Corey's Network. You have Can't See Mothers in Charge, which is their primary function is to help the mothers, or what have you, who have lost their children to homicides. You have Healing Pathway Victim Service Agency. Their primary focus is the children of homicide victims. And then if there's a cremation, and the county does have a program that helps families who are having financial challenges as well.
And so that's through the county.
Right, yeah. So it's called a Jackson County Indigent Cremation Program. And granted, it's just for cremations or what have you. But if they're, most of the time, it's for unclaimed individuals who don't have any surviving relatives or no one, connected to their circumstances, or families who are just having some very intense financial challenges, the county will work with you as far as getting your loved one taken care of.
That's good information. That's really good information to know, especially with all the violence that goes on in the community. There's a lot of young people, and I see it in insurance a lot. People don't want to think about life
Right.
insurance for their children, so a lot of them are uncovered. And so, is that something that you guys run into a lot with the gun violence and things like that? Do you find that a lot of those situations come in, more on the unprepared side and needing to tap into some of these agencies and other resources?
Yeah, well, almost most definitely, because obviously it's an unexpected passing or what have you. You definitely see a lot of trauma, family dealing with trauma, a lot of generational challenges, financially, economically, you name it or what have you. So definitely, unfortunately, you see some of the GoFundMe accounts and things like that going around to pay for
Right.
burial expenses.
So we got a question here from Stephanie Kimbrough. She says, "I don't
Okay.
know if you're
Hey,
taking
Stephanie.
questions." She's asking about burial insurance not connected with a specific funeral company, and so that would be your just your traditional life insurance policy. It can be used anywhere because it's essentially a check that goes to the family, and the
Mhm.
beneficiary is able to direct that check wherever it needs to go. And so,
Right.
when you get life insurance, your family is just able to use it at any funeral home. And so
Right.
hopefully that answers the question. Now, when it comes to the pre-need plans versus life insurance, sometimes people get that confused. And so life insurance is a check to the
Right.
family. From your perspective as a funeral director, how would you describe a pre-need plan from the funeral home?
So we have traditionally we've had what we call a trust funded pre-need. Trust funded pre-need is kind of where you would come in the funeral home and you're literally planning for your funeral to happen 20, 30 years down the line or what have you. So you can plan every small detail from whether you're choosing a burial or cremation, the type of casket, the style of casket. You can literally customize every small detail from the programs, the flowers, you name it. And so for a monthly fee as low as $50 a month, until it's paid off, you can you can start a contract with the funeral home or what have you. And so, in my personal opinion, um, because prices are guaranteed to increase, every 5 or 10 years, if not every year, I would almost go the route of the prepaid burial plan at time, but the prepaid burial plan only because you're locking the prices for the time frame. Whereas with life insurance, you're coming in, you're securing yourself, but you're not guaranteed to get the same rate that you would 20 years from now that you would today or what have you.
That
And,
makes
and we
sense.
know that prices are guaranteed to increase.
Right, right. And so, really, life insurance and the pre-need plan work hand in hand with the life insurance providing the
True.
correct amount of money that's needed. But then you still
Right.
want that pre-need plan to lock in the cost of the services as well as the casket and other
Right.
merchandise. Am I hearing that correctly?
Right. Correct. That's right.
Okay,
Absolutely.
very good, very good. Let's see here. We got Jamie Jackson Howell talk about the benefit of pre-needs. I think we covered that. We got a question here from Crystal. She says, "Can a beneficiary elect to have life insurance proceeds be payable to a funeral home, or does it have to be made payable to beneficiary to pay out?" That's a good question. So you
Yeah,
can
very good question.
have it depending on the insurance company, depending on the life insurance company. That some will allow you to make the beneficiary the funeral home,
Hmm.
and some will not, and so that's kind of on a case by case basis. Um, but you can. Were you gonna say something, Laura?
Yeah, I know. Oftentimes, in my experience, what normally in the life care, a lot of seniors when they're going to retirement centers or nursing home, they have to and apply for Medicare and Medicaid. They have to spend down their assets, and so an asset would be considered like a life insurance policy. And so, oftentimes, the government will inform families to either obviously to cash in those policies, or to use them towards some type of or do some yeah. I mean, yeah, you can either transfer to the funeral home name or to use it toward cash it down, use it towards some type of prepaid funeral arrangements.
Right, right. And another way that I help my clients with that too, only the what they're worried about as far as the nursing home is the access
Right.
to the cash value in a policy. And so what I always advise my clients to do once they reach a certain age, and that's a consideration, is to transfer ownership to whoever the beneficiary is. And so if
Right.
it's the
That's right.
child, a spouse or something like that, and that gets around the Social Security issue of them wanting you to basically cash out your policy, which
Basically, right. That's right.
absolutely doesn't make sense because then it leaves the family in a bad spot. They have to figure out a burial just because you got Social Security, but you've been paying into your whole life while you were working. So that's a little bit
Oh,
of
you're
a
right.
um, okay. Now, the other question I had here. So you mentioned pricing. You said for as low as $50 a month, and so correct me if I'm wrong, but with the pre-need plan, that's essentially like layaway. Like if you go to Walmart, you
Basically.
pick everything out, you get a total price. Say it's $6,000, $7,000, and then you're just paying that down. What happens if the person passes away before it's paid off? Does the family just covers the balance at that time?
Right. Great question. So yeah, so basically you have to cover the remaining balance of that pre-need during the time of need. Yeah, basically what you would do. Right.
Gotcha. Now, how are families protected? For those that don't know, in a pre-need plan, how are they protected? So I know a lot of people are familiar with life insurance, and it's a contract with the insurance company, and there's a certain amount of faith with that. What protections are in place for people that invest in pre-need plans?
So really good question. So historically, there was what we had what they call credit life insurance or what have you, and the credit life insurance was kind of like a backup, basically, for those pre-needs. If you passed prematurely before the pre-need was paid off, the credit life insurance would kick in and to cover the remaining expenses. But unfortunately, that's no longer something that we offer. So unfortunately, if you had a pre-need and say you had a pre-need and you had a couple $1,000s left remaining on to pay out when you pass away prematurely, you just have to have the remaining balance before the services.
Got you, got you. Okay, so let's move on. So 2020, we got introduced to the coronavirus,
Oh
COVID-19.
man,
Um,
man.
you know, man, I personally, my father passed away from COVID on
I'm so
October
sorry to hear that.
1st. I've had clients in the hospital with it. I know several people that have contracted it. I feel sorry for any family who's had to deal with that. But my question is, have there been any changes to the COVID guidelines as far as funeral services, and how have you guys been handling that?
Yeah, man, 2020 was a very interesting year. So we'll say COVID became my friend. Well, in March, I think, of 2020. And so in the very, very, very beginning of this whole COVID-19 situation, we were not allowed to have any funerals at all whatsoever. Well, we were only allowed graveside services, absolutely, if it was a burial or whatnot. And
Okay.
so those burials were limited to 10 individuals only. But part of the 10 individuals was the funeral home personnel, and include the clergy if it was a religious service.
Oh
So
wow.
we're talking maybe 7 or 8 relatives at the max, right?
Mm,
And then as the, I'll say maybe May or June came along, then the local ordinances began to be relaxed, and there was a 10% or 10 people limit to funerals, then 25% capacity of a location, and then back to 50, then up to 50%. So I believe our current mandate is around, I think, 50% of the capacity rate of a facility or what have you. But I mean,
okay.
at this time, you see, I think a lot of people are really trying their best to, with COVID cases increase them substantially, especially here in the last few months. I'll say most people have been pretty understanding
Mhm.
about, not wanting to have anything elaborate, not wanting to have, large funeral ceremonies.
So when you said 50% of the capacity, in your case in particular, I know you guys have two locations here,
Right,
one on Linwood and one on Fifth and Quindaro in KCK. Um,
right.
what are the capacities of those? And if anyone had something, going on here pretty soon, how could they plan for that?
Yeah, so what we've kind of been abiding by in the chapel there, we've kind of really been allowing no more than 50 people in the chapel for a funeral service itself. Some of the, if it's a visitation, of course, most of those are come and go. We leave those out to be public, but we try to limit our funeral ceremony to 50 people or more, if it's at the chapel, that is, or what have you, at our Linwood Chapel. Our two of the locations are a little bit larger than our Linwood Chapel, so we can accommodate a little bit more people.
Hmm.
But temperatures are still being checked, sanitizer provided, and we know everyone must kind of adhere to any social distancing measures as much as possible.
Got it, got it. And so
Yeah,
50 people limit because it's a 50% of the capacity, and so you guys are capping it at 50 people.
right,
Um, and that includes the staff and everything as well?
right, correct. Oh yeah.
Including the staff. Okay, got it. Now, for the family that isn't able to make the funeral, are you guys making any, changes as far as using technology, live streams, or anything like that, so that the rest of the family can be a part of the service?
Yeah, great question. We've been doing a lot of live streaming last year and this year as well so far. So we do have that option as well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, man, I appreciate it. Those were the questions I have here. I think we covered. Let's see. No, I think we got another question here. Latanya Barber. She asked if a person moves to another state, can a pre-need plan transfer?
Great question. Depends on, you have some pre-needs that are life insurance funded or insurance funded pre-needs. Then you have some trust. So it almost depends on what kind of pre-need they would have or whatnot. And so the funeral home, the forwarding funeral home and the receiving funeral home will kind of coordinate those details, as in, what services that we're going to provide, what service they would provide, or what have you. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's why I always advise my clients, if you think that you may be moving or anything like that, it's really best to kind of work with life insurance. Now,
Hmm.
because you've helped a couple of my clients. Now, if a person has life insurance, right, and so they really don't need to fund the funeral in and of itself, but they do
Hmm.
want to lock in the savings
Hmm.
of the pre-need, how would they be able to do that?
Yeah, so great question. So we have what we call insurance funded pre-need. So it would kind of be on the same level of a pre-need. You come in and you choose, the services, the package, plenty of small detail from the style of casket, if it's a burial, program of flowers, and for it's very low payment, 150. You just lock in the price for the day. And we know we keep a copy of the insurance, on file, what have you, so that we have it when it's time to use it. Um, for like a better words. But yeah, you can do what we call insurance funded pre-need and just pay the minimal down payment, and as long as you keep your monthly payments up, that'd be on the responsibility of the policy owners to do.
So they just keep up with their life insurance, but there's no additional monthly payment to the funeral home. There's just a down payment to lock in the pricing, correct?
Right, correct. That's right.
And so in that case, technically everyone who has life insurance, if you know that you're going to have your services in a specific city or state, it really does make sense to go ahead and make that small one-time payment.
Yeah.
Lock in, to go ahead and lock in those savings, because as we know, the prices of funerals is only going to go up from here. And so that does make a lot of sense. That's good information, because you want your insurance policy as much as possible to not go to the funeral home. We definitely want to take care we want to take care of our loved ones, but we want something left over if we can help it. And so that's one way of protecting ourselves by doing that pre-need. That makes sense.
Then I would tell people that, life insurance is an investment, what have you. I know the original intent was, as an income replacement for a spouse, if they, for a surviving spouse, if, one spouse passed away. And so, you have kids and you have college education and you still have a mortgage to pay, or what have you, and bills that are coming. And so, of course, the original intent for life insurance was as an income replacement, an investment for your future. So, I'm always torn between the both, to be real about it.
Right. Now, see, like on my side of the business in selling life insurance, I love my clients, and I hate to ever get to a point where a claim has to be paid out. But fortunately, I can say that that's only happened, a certain number of times, where on your end, you're dealing with it on a daily basis. Just from one professional to another. I know whenever I've had a client pass away, it affects me because I make my clients a part of my family. I talk to them regularly and things like that. How do you deal with that as a funeral director? Just seeing so much grief and the emotion and everything that comes with that. How do you deal with that?
I always say it takes a special person to be in the industry. Just in general, I'm sure you can kind of attest to that as well. Unfortunately, you learn unfortunately deal with it on a daily basis. There's some level of desensitization. You get desensitized to it, for the most part, at times. Granted, you still try to maintain your composure, and your caring and compassionate personality, but over a period of time, there is some level of, becoming desensitized to the reality of death, if that makes sense at all.
It does, because even doing what I do, I have to talk about death every day. It's just a topic of conversation, but what it really does for me is it brings it home that life is short and unpredictable. And
it is.
Have to, love the people in our lives while we can, because we never know what tomorrow may bring. We never do. I did have a question, something that I ended up dealing with. So when my father passed away, he was in Monroe, Louisiana, and it was kind of sudden because we got a call from the nursing home that he had gone into the hospital. He was on a respirator, and he didn't last very long after that. But it caught us off guard, and we kind of had to plan the funeral from here, from Kansas City, and the funeral from there. For people that may have loved ones out of town that may be transported back here, or vice versa, maybe they're going back down south. What have you seen as far as the cost of transporting a body? Like, what does that add on to the cost as we know it?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. So, keep in mind, as far as any like legal ramifications or what have you, whenever someone has to cross the state lines, you have to prepare, the human body if it's going to be a burial or any funeral visitation. And so, from one funeral home to the next, you have charges for, preparing the body, transporting the body to the funeral home where the local funeral home where the individual passed away at. And then, depending on the location, sometimes the individual is flown to the forwarding state. Sometimes they're driven, and so, I'll say from a financial perspective, you're looking at an additional maybe $2,000 or $3,000 for an air flight, and then preparation, of any permits and the human remains or what have you, and coordinate details from one seat to the next.
Got it. Good information. We got a question from Mr. Melvin Brown.
Okay.
Explain to everyone what should a family member do first while making arrangements for their loved one. Many times, an individual is unknowledgeable of the do's and don'ts. So, is there maybe like a one, two, three sort of checklist that you have in mind for people when that time comes?
That's a great question. So of course I'll tell everyone there's always while we're all grieving, what have you, and you have a lot of emotions and stuff like that up in the air. There's a business to it all as well, and so there are things like death certificates and obituaries that have to be written and stuff like that, and so it's a really good question, Melvin. um, I would always say, man, he got me on that one. What to do, right? Well, I'll always say first, I always want to ask, I'll keep in mind what would your loved one want, as far as would it be a burial, would it cremation? I always say be realistic about, the financial obligations as well. What's your family willing to handle financially? Um, but I guess the first point, yeah, that'd be the first point of reference to kind of determine, what direction they want to go in, if whether it's a burial cremation, what their financial circumstances are or whatnot. 'Cause that gives you a starting point on what direction to go in. Um, then from there, I mean, think about things like Social Security. In places like no information like the birthplace, education level, stuff like that. That's all information that we use to file on the state record or what have you.
Now, if I could jump in, I know one thing that everyone should do to make it easier on their family, like you talked about, knowing what their wishes are. A lot of times we just don't want to have the conversation, and so
That's
when a
true.
person passes away, nobody knows. Like when I go and I meet with people in their 70s, to talk about life insurance, their family
Mhm.
doesn't want to be a part of the conversation, and so
Right.
they never really know what's going on. They don't even know what insurance company holds the
Hmm.
life insurance policy a lot of times. And so, what I advise my clients to do when you get your policy, get a lockbox. So if you don't have like a safe deposit box, get a lockbox or something along those lines. I go in a lot of homes, probably about 20 homes a week. And I ask people, they say they've already got life insurance. Well, hey, where's your policy
Hmm.
at? Nine times out of
Right.
10, they have no idea. And so I help them understand that, okay, well, if you were to pass away right now, you don't know where your policy is. What do you expect your family to be able to do? And so I know I've had to go through situations of, scouring bank accounts, old bank records
Right.
to find an insurance company name and then call to see, hey, is this insurance policy active?
Right. Yeah.
I've seen situations where a person had life insurance, but it was never claimed, and so there's an
Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
process for that. There's actually a process for that. So say if a loved one had a life insurance policy, you couldn't find it, you didn't claim it, that money isn't gone. That money
Right.
isn't
Yeah.
gone. And so the insurance company basically holds it. They make interest off of it, but it's literally just
Hmm.
sitting there waiting to be claimed. And after a period of time, it goes to that state fund. And so if you ever saw those commercials where it says, you may have some cash, some old bank
Right.
accounts,
Yeah.
something like that, you can find a life insurance policy through that. You can also go to the Department of Insurance website in your
That's
state,
right.
and there's actually a place there where you can search for a policy. What will
Hmm.
happen is the Department of Insurance will send a letter out to all of the insurance companies operating within the state, and they have a certain amount of time to be able to get back with the state and let them know if they saw a policy under the name of your loved one. And so
Hmm.
those old policies can be claimed, but let's not put our family in that situation.
Right.
Make sure that we, plan ahead, like you said, having a lockbox, writing down our wishes. If the family doesn't want to talk about it, that doesn't mean that it just goes away or we don't have to think about it. What we have to do is just go ahead and write down our wishes, put it with the life insurance policy, put in the lockbox or some safe place. And if nothing else, at least let them know where that is.
Yeah, and I think to piggyback on that too, and I hope this helps as well, Melvin, is that as uncomfortable as the conversation is about death, we have to have it or whatnot. It's a relevant conversation because I think not only does it make it harder on the family, well, it just makes it harder on the people who are left behind or what have you. Like I said, there's a lot of decisions to be made during that time.
Yeah.
And the part of the importance of the advantage of planning ahead of time is that you're helping alleviate, the additional stress, the additional mental anguish or what have you, that comes with, laying your loved one to rest or whatnot. So everything from making sure bank accounts have someone else's name on it, making sure there's a beneficiary on your life insurance policy, finding someone that you really trust to take care of your finance and final affairs. Your estate, your property, your real estate, you name it, your car. We just have to have the uncomfortable conversation. And I think the more we have it, the more, the more normal, I won't say normal, but the more comfortable people become, with just the reality that at some point they're going to pass away and that the business has to be taken care of.
Right. We got another comment from Mr. Brown. It said the purpose of his question was because he didn't have a clue what to do when his father died.
Oh, gotcha.
I feel you on that. And it says, thankfully, Lawrence A. Jones gave me some guidance and were patient with me. They not only took care of my father, but my grandparents and countless other family members. So
amazing.
I believe that was a thank you to there. That's awesome. Now,
Thanks
I did have a question. I was on 1590 with Lawrence Jr. About
my uncle. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and we were talking about life insurance and the funeral plans. And one thing that he brought up, I thought that was pretty interesting. He said that sometimes people bring in policies and they don't end up paying out. So they bring in a life insurance policy, but it doesn't pay out. What are some of the reasons that you've seen for that?
Yeah, great question. So I'm sure you can kind of answer this as well. So oftentimes, when people get life insurance policies, you have to have at least 2 years or more, or what have you, for the insurance company to pay out the full benefit amount. There's been several times where I've served families and they've brought in a policy, and unfortunately, they might have got the policy the year before. And so all the insurance company is going to do is pay out the premium that had been invested, that entire year. And so unfortunately, the funeral homes can't utilize their policy because the bid is not going to cover the amount, the amount of funeral expenses or what have you. So I'm thinking in that term, he might have been talking about a contestable insurance policy that had not accumulated the 2 year, that had not made to the 2 year clause.
Right. So as an insurance agent, I do want to elaborate and give some clarification on that because there's a little bit of confusion with how that works. There's two different things. There's a 2 year waiting period. One is called a waiting period. And then there's a 2 year contestable period, which are two completely different things. So the way that works, when a person first applies for life insurance, depending on their health and their age, they may not qualify for immediate coverage. A situation would be, a 65-year-old man that had a heart attack last week. There isn't a company in the country that's going to give him what's called same-day coverage. In the instance of same-day coverage, a person could pass away a week after the first payment, and the insurance company is still going to pay. The only thing that they're going to do is contest it. So that's where the contestability comes in. So if it's the first 2 years on a same-day coverage policy and they pass away, the insurance company is just going to go back and check to make sure there weren't any lies on the application, any misstatements, so that they can basically back out of it and not have to pay a claim. After 2 years in the state of Missouri, a policy becomes non-contestable. And so even in the event of suicide, which we hope that never happens, but if it does, it still has to pay out. And so again, there's a 2 year waiting period that's based off of your health at the time that you take out the policy. The insurance company may say, hey, if you pass away from natural causes in the first 2 years, we're just going to give a refund of the premium. And then there's the contestable. So they say, hey, we're going to give you same day coverage, but if you pass away in the first 2 years, we're going to investigate to make sure that there weren't any lies on the application and we didn't miss anything. There's like a little bit of a difference there, but I've definitely seen situations where that people have got caught with that. Like you said, they get a policy, off TV or something like that. There's a 2 year waiting period. They pass away, and there just isn't enough to cover for the family. We got another question here from Stephanie Kimbrough. She says, can you have too much insurance? And is the policy at your job enough? So on the too much insurance, there's an income rule. And so it's based off of your age and your income. And there's so many multiples of your income that you can get based on your age. The younger you are, the more insurance you can have. And as you get older, then they start knocking down the multiple of that. And so it just really depends on your income. And then is the policy at your job enough? I always say no to that. Not
Right.
because it may not be a sufficient amount of coverage, the amount may be sufficient, but what you have to think about, Stephanie, is that you don't control the company and you don't control their benefits. And so life insurance isn't something that's mandated by the state or the federal government for employers to provide. And so at any point in time, they can cancel that program. What you have to think about in that instance is you may be a little bit older, so that means the premiums will be higher for a policy, on the open market, or your health could have declined and you may not qualify for the policy that you would have. And so I always tell people, even though you're working, use that as a backstop, because you never know, you may switch jobs and you may not be able to
Right.
take
That's
it with
right.
you. You may retire and you can't take it with you.
Right.
So it's always important to have something that you fully own and control in addition to whatever you have at your job. Yeah. Now, have you seen any difference on your end as far as dealing with work insurance versus private insurance, or is the process pretty well the same?
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, you have to have always family come in with like an HR consultant, from if it was from a job or what have you. Um, that makes it a bit easier, to connect versus calling the 1-800 number and trying to get a hold of somebody in the HR department, to verify the insurance. But for the most part, sometimes group life insurance can be a little bit more, take a little bit longer, but it really matters the insurance company, honestly.
Now, this is a serious question. A friend asked me, he wanted to make sure that I asked you this. And so
Sure.
um, we know in the last couple of years, the violence in Kansas City has like been through the roof.
Man, oh my God.
There's even,
Yeah.
yeah, there's even been instances where violence has occurred at the funeral, right?
Hmm.
So,
Let me tell you.
yeah, yeah. Um, have you run into any situations where maybe special arrangements needed to be made in advance for the safety of the family due to the situation of the person that was deceased?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I'll always say, I've dealt with both. Sometimes the family will forewarn you that there are some challenges within the family dynamics or what have you. So, when it comes to stuff like that, we try to ask them if there's a need to have security there or what have you. So we'll take the extra step, or we'll ask the family to take the extra step to have security there, just to ensure that everything, goes efficiently as possible. Then there are those situations where they're unpredictable, and cousin so and so and brother so and so are not getting along, and they end up having a brawl at the funeral. So yeah, we've dealt with that before several times actually. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
Have you had to get in there and wrap anybody up? Yeah, good, good, man. So, man, I appreciate having you on here. I was really excited to be able to just ask you these questions, get this information out to the people. I know it's important. I'm sure they appreciate it. It's something
Yeah,
that we'll
most
all
definitely.
have to deal with at some point. Um, it's just one of those things. It's a fact of life, and so I appreciate having you on. Can you give everybody your information, how they can get in contact with you if they have any additional questions?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on, and I really enjoyed this. This is my first time, I'm at the Lawrence A. Jones and Son Funeral Chapels. Our Linwood location is on 1800 East Linwood Boulevard, and that's on the intersection of 31st Street in Linwood, and the cross section of Linwood and Woodland. I can be reached at 816-921-1800, and then we have a location at 2065 North Fifth Street, and that's on the corner of Fifth and Quindaro in Kansas City, Kansas, Wyandotte County. And our number over there is 913-371-5352. But either there, you can reach me there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Messenger as well. Larnell Gregory Jones. Feel free to shoot me a message or what have you.
Great, great. It looks like we got one last question here. Just want to make
Yeah.
sure that we get everyone answered. It says very important in cases where an individual who doesn't have adequate insurance, is it true you should clear out the bank account of your deceased loved one within a matter of days because the banks will block access and it becomes difficult to withdraw funds to pay for funeral expenses? Have you seen that?
That's a really, really great question. So, and that's I think one thing about when it comes to end of life care, or just even when you're living, you want to have somebody on your bank account to take care of any of your business affairs in case something does happen. I think the proper term is called, I think, pay on death, I believe
Yeah.
is the term
Mhm.
that you would set up with the bank. And so obviously you want to have somebody who you can trust, who will take care of your business affairs, who can be listed on your account to take care of it, in the event that you expire prematurely or what have you.
Got it.
But yeah, that is accurate. Funeral homes are required to notify the Social Security Administration once someone had passed away. But between the medical entity or the funeral home, the banks will be alerted that an individual has passed away. And so yes, oftentimes the bank account do get locked up until a certified death certificate is presented by someone over their affairs or whatnot, or if the estate is has been finalized, which could take up to months as well.
Wow, wow. Got it. Got it. Um, and have you ever bumped into the probate issue when it comes to someone, thinking maybe that there were funds there, but they got tied up in probate through some mechanism or another? Have you bumped into that?
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. Oftentimes that happens when someone passes away and no, there's no will, obviously, no will. I think the proper term is they've died intestate, where there was no will. There's no one over their affairs, no administrator over their affairs, or what have you. So yeah, to answer that question, yes, I have. Or say the life insurance didn't have a beneficiary on there. Uh, so unfortunately, no, those things go to the individual's estate. And
Awesome. Awesome. Man, this is great information. I've taken a ton of notes myself. I hope the listeners have as well. I encourage you, share this, especially with your family. Share this with your other family members so that you guys can, just get on the same page, so you can avoid having any type of crisis in the future. Um, any last words, Larnell?
Man, I thank they for having me on here, man. Again, if you all, you want to reach me, you can reach me at both locations, 921-1800 or 913-371-5352. Again, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. I will have you be more than happy to assist you in whatever capacity I can.
And like I said at the beginning, people, don't just take information without taking action. Don't do that. It's like
Right.
getting a gym membership, paying for it every month, and never going and working out. It's not going to help you at all. So, we talked about life insurance. We talked about wills. We talked about trust. We talked about pre-need plans. We covered all the bases. There'll definitely be a replay of this, so you can go back, listen to it again, take notes, share it with your friends and family. But make sure that you're prepared. Make sure that you don't leave your family in a tough spot when that time comes. We appreciate all of you tuning in. If you have any additional questions, drop them in the chat. We'll be in still for maybe the next hour, hour and a half or so, and we'll get those questions answered. We love all of you. Thank you. Have a good night.